Alright, today we're focusing on the backhand brush. I'm going to demonstrate with 3 loops. Notice how relaxed and smooth my hand is. First, second, third. See how fluid that is? This technique is actually quite difficult, more so than the forehand. When practicing, be very careful not to hit your hand on the table. With the forehand, you might clip your thumb, but on the backhand, you can really injure this part of your hand, so be mindful. However, it's excellent for developing the feel for brushing the ball, especially that initial bite at contact. When you practice this, the ball must clear the net. Now, pay close attention to which part of my body is generating the power and brushing the ball upwards. That's right, I'm using my fingers. Did you see my racket head rotate? Look closely. This is not rotation, this is just pushing the ball up. Now watch again. Do you see the racket head rotating this time? I believe my effective backhand brush has a lot to do with this racket head rotation. This applies to both shakehand and penhold grips, you must get the racket head moving. Let me show you two on the forehand side. See if I'm rotating it there as well. The forehand rotates too, right? The problem for many amateur players is that their stroke looks like this. Is this racket truly rotating? The same goes for the backhand. Is this considered rotation? This is precisely why you struggle to generate power in your loops. That's not rotation. You might think you're rotating, but you're actually just lifting. Your racket angle is the same at the start and end of the stroke. You're simply using your arm to lift the ball, without any active racket head rotation. Let me show you the difference. Without rotation, even if your racket face is closed, your follow-through maintains that same angle. The angle change is just a byproduct of your arm swinging. Not an active, intentional rotation. Now, watch the fingers. This is rotation. You can see the trajectory of the ball is completely different. The same principle applies to the backhand. If your racket angle doesn't change from backswing to follow through, you're not rotating. If your racket face is open at the start and still open at the end, you've only lifted the ball. Even if you manage to lift those balls with weak spin, it's not a threatening shot. Your opponent can just smash it easily. So, your racket head must rotate. Watch it closely, at the moment of contact, it snaps. This is how you actively and intentionally generate spin. I believe your fingers must be the first thing to activate at contact to generate spin yourself. Be careful not to over-rotate the racket head, the tip should never point back at your own body. The motion is a downward dip, a forward snap, and then it stops. If you rotate too far, your power will go sideways. Because once my wrist snaps forward, the rest of the stroke, the forward drive and forearm rotation, is powered by the arm. My wrist action stops here, and the arm takes over to complete the motion. It's not a continuous wrist rotation all the way through. That will dissipate the power from the brush. Therefore, the sequence must be a wrist dip, followed by a forward snap. Let me demonstrate. The forehand is the same, see how the wrist snaps forward and stops. It snaps forward and stops. The backhand follows the same principle. My wrist snaps forward and stops, without any extra sideways flick. At this point, it's all about the arm. The wrist is primarily responsible for generating the initial spin, and the arm provides the forward power. You don't use the wrist for the entire stroke, or your loop will have spin but no pace. Crucially, at the moment of contact, avoid using your entire wrist to swing. Let me show you two shots. Tell me which one uses finger power and which one uses wrist power. First one. Second one. Which was the wrist, and which was the fingers? Correct, the second one was the fingers. You might feel like you're looping the ball successfully with your wrist, but a loop generated by the wrist isn't actually very spinny. The ball goes over, but it lacks real spin. You've only managed to convert backspin into topspin. But when you use your fingers, even without extra power or acceleration, the spin is immense. This creates an explosive acceleration that is faster and more concentrated than what the wrist can produce. So, for amateur players, learning to use your fingers to execute this brushing action is a critical step. Don't just rely on rotating your wrist as you've been told. While that may get the ball on the table, it will lack any real threat. So how do you use your fingers? While fingers don't contribute much to raw power, in terms of spin generation, a stroke with finger acceleration is several times spinnier than one without. Many players don't understand what finger power really means. Think about arm wrestling. Where does the power come from? Arm wrestling uses the wrist and forearm. So what is finger power? Let's try this exercise. Press your finger against mine and apply pressure. Push harder. That is finger power. I can control his finger easily. Your finger feels like a steel bar, it's incredibly firm. So, at the moment of contact, your fingers cannot be soft. They must be firm and solid. At contact, your fingers should feel like a steel bar. Right now, yours are soft. At contact, they must be firm. That's the first point. Second, use that pressure to drive me forward. That's the feeling of a forehand drive. What about a push? Drive me downwards with force. Exactly. First, you must make your fingers firm. Second, you direct that firmness, forward for a drive, upward for a loop, and downward for a push. It's just like arm wrestling. You have to be firm, right? If you're limp, you'll lose immediately. You have to be firm here, and that represents your fingers. Your tendons are taut. Your fingers are a smaller lever, but the tendons must be just as engaged. Then, you use that power to direct the racket down, up, or forward. We're using the index finger as an example, but the thumb is also crucial. Press forward. That's the feeling for the backhand. Press firmly. You're still not firm enough. Lock it in. There you go. If your fingers are soft like noodles, how can you generate any force? It's impossible. Second, many players grip the racket with a gap between their palm and the handle. How can you transfer power like that? You can't. Even if I only use my thumb and index finger, curling my other 3 fingers away, I can still generate a very spinny loop because those 2 fingers are fully engaged. See? It still has plenty of spin. The same goes for the forehand. If I open my back 3 fingers and rely solely on finger pressure, I can still make the ball spin heavily. If your fingers aren't firm and providing solid support, it won't work. You must build on that firmness and secure the racket. For forehand, the index finger provides the pressure. For backhand, it's the thumb. For penholders, it's the back 3 fingers. Every top player I've seen with a great forehand has their fingers extended and pressing firmly, not curled up. They press so hard they almost wear through the rubber, securing the blade to drive forward, down, or sideways, never with a loose grip. With a loose grip, none of your power will transfer to the ball. For generating spin, once you master finger power, your brush will be spinnier than others. This is even more apparent in serving. It's not about the vague concept of relaxing, then gripping. If you grip tightly at the moment of contact, your hand will tense up, and you won't be able to brush the ball at all. The grip happens after the brush. For example, if I don't tighten my grip at the end, the ball goes long. I need to complete the brush and then secure the racket at the peak of the arc to control the follow-through. That's when you grip. If you want more spin than your opponent, you have to use your fingers. A good body turn and a powerful arm swing are for power, not spin. Finger control is what determines the level of rotation. Make sure there are absolutely no gaps in your grip. For penholders, don't hold it loosely, press into it. When you brush the ball with this secure grip, the spin will be incredible. Secure the blade firmly. The feeling should be that your fingers are about to press right through the wood. Just like in the exercise, feel like you're trying to push through the ball. Look at my fingers, they are pressing hard enough to break the racket. Only when you have this intense pressure can you truly call it finger power. The idea of gripping at contact is impossible. By then, the stroke has stopped, so where would the brush or forward momentum come from? The gripping action is part of the follow-through, to stabilize and stop the motion, controlling the power you've just unleashed. Second point, when exactly do you tense up for the brush? My approach is that during the backswing for a backspin ball, my 3 key joints, shoulder, elbow, and grip, must be relaxed. This applies to the backhand as well. For amateur players, the moment the opponent serves, you shouldn't tense up prematurely. You should be relaxed, but as soon as they start their motion, you get stiff. Before you even begin your forward swing, if you are already tense, you will lose spin potential, and your acceleration will be sluggish, won't it? So when do you apply force? You stay relaxed and composed, and only at the very start of your forward swing do you begin to apply power. Don't be relaxed and then suddenly tense up before the ball even arrives. If you do that, your entire swing will be stiff. Once you master the timing of this transition from relaxed to tense, that feeling will stay with you forever. When do you accelerate? During the backswing, maintain a light grip, maybe 30%, just enough to keep your structure. Then, at the exact moment I start my forward swing to meet the ball, I begin to tense up and engage my fingers. Don't get tense just because the ball is coming. Tensing up too early ruins everything. In a match, that tension, combined with slow footwork and reactions, makes you play like a robot. Why do top players look so graceful? It's a rhythm of relax, then explode. There's a clear distinction. If you're always tense, your movements look awkward. If you're always relaxed, you're not skilled enough. It's all about having a balance of tension and relaxation. It's the same in martial arts. A master is relaxed, then strikes. That feeling makes them look like an expert. So, everything in life requires a balance of tension and relaxation. If you're too relaxed, you become complacent and your focus suffers. But if you're too tense, you'll have mental issues, maybe even depression or illness. So, we must find that balance. But remember, the tension should start at the moment you begin your swing. Watch, I'm relaxed, and now I engage. Don't tense up from the start, or you won't be able to brush the ball. Third key point. Many players feel they can't generate power on their backhand loop. Let me explain a principle. For the backhand, your backswing must be close to your body. Imagine the edge of the table as my body. Your hand must stay close to it. The common problem is, when a ball is short, you rush forward to brush it or start your stroke too early. Or you just place your hand there waiting, which prevents you from generating power. You have to understand, from your backswing position, you must wait. The ball will always come to your racket. You need to wait until it's close before you start your swing. This timing is incredibly important, otherwise you can't brush the ball properly. Second point on this, let's say this is my backswing position. As I move forward to meet the ball, the angle and shape of my arm and wrist do not change. Even as I move forward to adjust to a shorter ball, my arm's posture remains the same. It's not that as soon as I move forward, I must start rotating. If you do that, how can you possibly brush the ball effectively? You prepare your backswing here. If the ball is a bit short, don't start rotating your wrist the moment you start your forward swing. That's incorrect. As I move forward to find the ball, my hand maintains its ready position. Only at the exact moment of contact do I execute the brushing action. If I'm in my backswing and a long ball comes, I can rotate directly from that position. If the ball is shorter, I move forward to meet it, maintaining my ready position the whole time. Then, once I've moved into position, at the instant I contact the ball, I execute the brush. Do not start the brushing motion as you are moving forward. On the backhand, maintaining space is critical. Often, you prepare your backswing, the ball comes short, and you feel jammed and unable to generate force. Essentially, you've completed your stroke motion before you've even made contact with the ball, so you feel powerless. This often happens during serve-receive. Your opponent tries to serve long, but it comes out high or short. You get a half-long ball that's awkward to attack. So what do? For a ball like that, you start your backswing, and as you move forward and up, your racket posture remains unchanged. Then, at the moment of contact, you execute the rotation. As I move in, my racket angle is stable, still in the ready-to-brush position. This applies to the forehand too. As I move in to contact the ball, I can still be in my backswing posture right up until contact, and then execute the brush. Many players rotate too early. The moment they start their forward swing, they instinctively start to rotate their wrist and racket, which means by the time they hit the ball, the brushing action is already over. This results in the ball going into the net. If you are set and the ball comes right to you, you can rotate immediately. If the ball is short, use your arm to reach forward, and then execute the stroke at the moment of contact. Do not start the stroke while you are still moving to the ball. Don't try to brush a ball you haven't hit yet. If you start rotating during your backswing, by the time you make contact, your wrist will have already straightened out, and you'll end up just pushing the ball. For a long ball, prepare and execute. For a short ball, reach forward, then execute. It's not a rule that as soon as you swing forward, you must immediately rotate your wrist and arm. You must remember, only at the precise moment of contact should you initiate the brushing action. Before you touch the ball, you should not be brushing. Once you master this timing for the brush, your game will improve significantly. The fifth key point is that amateur players often struggle with adjusting their shots. It's usually one of two extremes. Either you use all your power, hit the ball into the net, and then get scared to hit hard again, so you switch to just softly lifting the ball high over the net. You're either at 100% power or you're just purely brushing and lifting the ball. Think of the stroke as a process from 0 to 10. From 0 to 2, you're meeting the ball. From 2 to 6, you're brushing for spin. From 6 to 10, you're using your forearm for power. You need to analyze which part of that process is failing. It's not brushing from 2 all the way to 10, nor is it hitting hard from 2 all the way to 10. When the ball comes, my stroke is not all brush, nor is it all power. This all-or-nothing approach is why you make errors when trying to loop drive, and why your high arc loops lack quality. So, after you complete the brushing phase from 2 to 6, don't forget there's more to the stroke. Once you've secured the ball with spin, there's another phase. After I've brushed the ball, I must quickly accelerate my arm forward. That's how you execute a proper loop drive. So, in that 2 to 6 phase, your number one priority is ensuring the ball clears the net. That's the most important thing. After you pass 6, don't hesitate and don't stop. Use your arm to drive the power forward. Don't just lift the ball over and stop, or feel unsafe and add an extra lift at the end. A loop like that means you've learned the basic motion, but your loop is not a weapon. I suspect most amateurs are at this stage. You can get the loop on the table, but when you try to add power, you make mistakes. If you don't use power, your opponent can easily counter-hit it. Remember, one shot has multiple phases. 0 to 2 is finding the ball, 2 to 6 is brushing, and 6 to 10 is driving with power. Once you integrate these, you're set. If I'm in a good position, I can execute the full stroke, all the way to 10. If I have to move for the ball, maybe my stroke only goes to an 8, focusing more on the brush. If I'm playing a short angle, I might use less motion and only add a little power at the end. Maybe to an 8, because the distance is short. If I'm off balance and stretching for a ball, I'll focus on brushing up to an 8. You have to learn to adjust.